Sam Mendes goes for the personal touch with a film about cinema. Not just the art of cinema, but actual cinema, working in a theater. And also the people that work there and their own personalities and their own relationships. And this film is nominated for one Academy Award for Best Cinematography. Should you watch it? I'm John Stark from MagTheMovieGuy.com, and this is my review of Empire of Light. I'm a blind film critic, so I watch films with audio description, and this has audio description on HBO Max. It's a lovely British audio description, too, which is fine, because the film is British. So it was even nominated at the BAFTAs under Best British Film of the Year. So, that is, yeah, everything makes sense. So I wasn't like, oh, who's this guy? I was like, this feels appropriate. Everyone in the film has an accent. I don't know why. I don't know why the narrator wouldn't. Um, so, this is a film that's been on a little bit of a love it, hate it relationship with people. Not everybody was blown away by it. It came out sort of the same year that other filmmakers were doing their same sort of labor of love towards cinema. It stands in the shadows of The Fabelmans, and it does actually stand in the shadows of The Fabelmans. The Fabelmans is a better movie. Although there are some really interesting sequences in Empire of Light, because this one focuses less on the I want to direct films and more on the power of cinema from the people who work at a cinema. Empire is a cinema in the film. That is what, when you hear the words Empire of Light, it doesn't mean like empire like a kingdom. It means empire like the movie theater is the empire. Anyway, the film stars with Olivia Coleman, Michael Ward, Colin Firth, Toby Jones, and mostly Olivia Coleman. She's the lead here. She got some buzz. She was sort of in the Best Actress race, and she just kind of didn't get it. I kind of get it why. I don't think she's not one of my favorite performances of the year. I think for Olivia Coleman, she's getting to be a little bit like, even though she doesn't quite have the depth of roles, she's been so fantastic in so many things that the bar is almost set so high for her to actually hit it every single time is really hard. You know, she's been so... she stretched herself so well and so fantastically in so many different roles. And we've seen her do the sort of the depression thing already and the mental illness and that it worked last year in The Lost Daughter. So when we touch on sort of similar elements in Empire of Light, I think it's very fresh in people's minds of the performance we just saw last year in The Lost Daughter, which, you know, is wasn't my favorite film either, but I think she carried that film. Here, I think she benefits a lot from Sam Mendes's Mendes. No, he's not plural. Sam Mendes's direction, and the choices that he makes. The film has a nice score. It's not my favorite score. It's kind of an aggressive score. It would be fun to listen to separately because it's pretty, but at some times you're like, it's a bit much. That would be my take on that, is that sometimes I didn't feel like what I was listening to necessarily fit with what was going on. It feels like the kind of score that's written for the grandiose of cinema, but doesn't necessarily take into account that these people just work in a movie theater. So perhaps they don't always need the grandiose, bombastic score that a film would get. I know it is itself a film, but it is also kind of a smaller film. As somebody who worked in movie theaters for over 10 years, personally, that's in my personal life, this film felt weird for me. It's not the same time period, I will give you that. Luckily, by the time I started working in movie theaters, we didn't have to make real changes. We had the platters, and we built movies into one giant thing that spun around and around. So we didn't have to shift the reel like they do in this film, where we had 2 projectors, and they had to time the thing just right. And so I didn't have to go through that experience. But also, I find it really hard to believe that this theater was open this whole time, and they have the exact same staff in every single role and every single day. They don't rotate. Anyone who's ever had a job knows the likelihood of that happening. Like, they don't have any, you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody takes a day off. The shift, the staff doesn't change. It's always, the one guy is the projectionist. That is what he does. He's the only one that will ever be. Olivia Coleman is the sort of supervisor's manager. She's not really, she's below Colin Firth, who's like the manager. She's the assistant manager. I don't know. I can't really figure it out. And she is the one, at least, that's tasked with training Michael Ward's new hire. Colin Firth is forward thinking, and he hired a black kid to work in his movie theater at a time when we can tell that in Britain, at least, it's still not fun to be black. Which, based on the films that they are mentioning, is around the 80s, right? Around like the early 80s, 1980. There's a mention about how they get the rights to Chariots of Fire coming up. They talked about Smokey and the Bandit, which I thought was really funny, because they were talking about what is the worst thing that you found in a movie theater. And they were having that conversation, and Olivia Coleman says dead body. And somebody died during Smokey and the Bandit, and they're like, yeah, it took a couple guys to carry him out. Yeah, that happened. I've been there. Luckily, I wasn't the one that went in and found, but I was working in a movie theater at the time, and a guy died during The Departed. He didn't wake up. He, I guess, fell asleep during the movie and didn't wake up, and his wife just thought he fell asleep during the movie. And then when the movie was over and they didn't get up. So, it's weird, because she said that story, and I was like, yep, that tracks. That's happened. And I'm sure there are other people who have theater experience that were like, yeah, I feel like, yep, that happened before. You work in the movie theater long enough. But it's just the lack of, it's this idea that everybody shows up to every shift that blew my mind. I was like, no, they don't. No, they don't. Did they at some point? Were jobs so scarce that people just gave up every day of their life to show up to a movie theater so that people could watch movies? I don't know. But I guess that's the world of Empire Light. Toby Jones is actually really interesting here. Nobody has talked about him a lot in their reviews. They focus a lot on Olivia Coleman and Michael Ward, but I just want to give a little shout out to Toby Jones. It was probably like perfect casting to be the projectionist. He feels so nerdy, so much like a movie, like a movie buff movie nerd from this time period. He completely embodies that person who works at a movie theater because they love cinema, and understand and want to be part of the art form and consider themselves, even though they're just a projectionist, consider themselves kind of part of the industry, the whole process. And I thought Toby Jones was a nice little supporting turn. It's not necessarily one of the best ones of the year, but he made an impact on me in a role that most people have ignored in their reviews. It's easy to talk about Michael Ward's performance because he's the black guy of the film in a film that tackles racism. So he gets all of it thrown at him. It's not like an ensemble film where all of the black characters experience varying levels of racism or something like that. He's the one character. This is a little bit like Armageddon Time. Now, it's less so because he does go home and we do get to see his mother, whereas the kid in Armageddon Time never went home. Apparently had no family, and Jalen Webb was just charged with representing an entire race of people and their experiences through that film. But but no, Michael Ward still has to be the face of a movement of an entire population during this time period, and experience and show us what it was like in this trip through time. There's some very effective scenes he's been given to work on here. There's one where he's just doing his job and this guy's being a dick, and it's kind of a great moment between the two of them. I mean, less for the guy who's being a dick, but Michael Ward just holds his ground, does a good job, does exactly what he was supposed to do. Does exactly what all of my ushers ever had to do. Whenever I thought it was so stupid. It's a guy that wanted to bring in food from the outside, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my god, how many ushers have I had over the years that like this has been a thing, where you try to stop people from entering with outside food because you want them to buy movie theater food, so because that's where the movie theater makes the money, is at the concession stand, not off of ticket prices. It takes such a small percentage. Anyway, if you don't know, look it up about how movie theaters work. But this guy was like, I want to bring it. So he just stands there and angrily eats it. And Michael Ward, figuring that this guy has done this to him because he's black, and this racist guy is like eating his chips. That's British, so he's probably just eating fries. So yeah, that's pretty much Empire of Light. They touch on relationships. Olivia Coleman touches on her relationship with Colin Firth, which is clearly set up to go nowhere. Is just one of those unfortunate things where she is obviously just being used by Firth, and later on she has this relationship with Michael Ward and tries to understand his perspective, but this whole time she is trying to control her own mental health. Really early on, she meets with the doctor that is prescribing her lithium, just to let the audience know where we stand with Olivia Coleman, just in case you thought Olivia Coleman was just going to be your average run-of-the-mill movie theater employee of a certain age. We had to let the audience know she's on lithium, which means exactly, it gives you that, okay, so that was put there to let us know it's going to be important later on. So, it's It's a film where I thought it was a little slow. It's a film that gave me a lot of nostalgia as somebody who worked in movie theaters. I love that for the most part, this film is set inside of a movie theater. I mean, most of the scenes are set inside this movie theater, and it's progressive enough that it is a multiple screen movie theater. This isn't like way back in the day where they only had one screen and you walked in and you just saw the one movie. But it is. It just. I just feel like I saw better films this year. This film didn't even run 2 hours. I didn't actually look at the runtime ahead of time, but then I noticed, and I was kind of. It was one of those films where I kept checking the time because I felt like hours had passed. Like it was like 30 minutes in, and I thought it was an hour in. It was moving so slowly. I was like, "Oh my god, really? That's all?" It was just one of those types of films. So I don't think it's a bad movie. I don't think it's an inherently awful movie or anything to watch. I just kind of understand why this didn't make the cut. I can't really comment on Roger Deakins' cinematography either. That's, again, blind film critic. So, and unfortunately, the narrator, when he did the audio description track for this, did not know that Roger Deakins would be nominated for cinematography. So he didn't sit there and make a whole shit ton of descriptive commentary on Deakins is going for what he's putting in a lens flare here, and what he's going for. Isn't that? He didn't like highlight and bring me in to on all the choices that Deakins was making. So, I don't know. It's probably great cinematography. I trust it. It's Roger Deakins. That's why it's nominated. I mean, if we're being honest, there's a reason this film is only nominated in that category. It's because Roger Deakins is generally viewed as being the GOAT when it comes to cinematography right now. So, it's probably a visually stunning film. So, even if it's not his best film, he's still, it's still like a Meryl Streep performance. It's like, it's hard to beat. Or a John Williams score. Like, some people are just the top in their field and they just get recognized regardless. So, that's what's happening here. But Sam Mendes has made better films. Olivia Coleman has had, I don't know, more effective performances, stronger performances, bolder performances I've liked more, performances that I've felt the need to champion more than this. I don't know what else to say. Michael Ward, he does a good job here. I mean, I'll remember him, but he's kind of trapped in this weird role where everything is sort of pushed onto him, and he's just a young kid trying to make his way in the world. And I felt very much like Armageddon time vibes, where you're forcing one actor to represent an entire race and an entire culture, and it's kind of unfair because it's a lot more complex than that. And when the story isn't even about that character, that's the other thing, is that neither of these characters, neither Jalen Webb nor Michael Ward, were the leads of their film. So the film isn't even about that. It's just like it's more of like a side plot or an afterthought. But I think he does good work with what he's given. But again, it was hard for me to pull him out as a standout performance. Colin Firth is whatever. I mean, he's just Colin Firth. He does exactly what he needs to. He's pompous and sexy. That's two things. He has to be attractive enough for you to believe that Olivia Coleman wants to bang him, but he also has to be pompous enough because his role is kind of an ass. So, done. He figured that one out. But in the pantheon of Firth performances, it's, again, we've seen stronger performances. So, that's Empire of Light. It's a film that has a lot of things going for it, but it's made by people who have all made things better than this, except perhaps Michael Ward, who we are introduced to. And now I know his name, and if I see him in something later on, I think the kid has a bright future, and it's possible he'll get an Oscar nomination later on down the line. You know, Brian Tyree Henry didn't get an Oscar nomination his first time out either. So give some time, give him a good role, and who knows? Who knows where he'll be in a couple years? Audio description here, like I said, is great. I love the fact that it was British and a British film. It focuses a lot on the aesthetics of the film, the cinematography. I love the pointing out of the real changes, the little like cigarette burns, little marks that let the projectionist know that a real change is about to happen. We still even had those, you know, even though we were doing, the film was spliced together into one giant reel, there were still, those things still existed to let us know a real change was about to happen when we actually had print. Now everybody just watches shit on digital. I don't even know if they bother. I don't think they exist anymore. But yes, I thought the description was fine. There wasn't a moment where I was like, I don't know what's going on here. It seemed to want to capture the magic of cinema. The funny thing is, I was thinking about movies like The Majestic, which also take place in sort of like a small movie theater and also kind of focus a little bit on the power of cinema. And I actually like The Majestic better. It's kind of an underrated Frank Darabont movie with Jim Carrey, and I would rather watch that again than this. So anyway, I think I've talked enough about it. Empire of Light. You guys get the general vibe of Empire of Light. I think I don't want to spoil anything because I'm trying not to like spoil Olivia Coleman's character arc entirely. So yeah, because that's really where the plot goes, is it kind of follows her character. Otherwise, it has nowhere to go. It really has very little places to go. So I'm gonna give Empire of Light. I'm gonna give it a B minus. Yeah, it's a little slow, and the performances are all good. It's still made by a team of people who come together to make decent things. It's just not a great film. This is like the same grade that I gave like Don't Worry Darling, by the way. So if you're trying to look for how did he feel about this versus another, I felt about the same way I felt with Don't Worry Darling, which had some cool ideas going on and some concepts and a great performance from Florence Pugh. It just didn't quite land everything, and I kind of feel like that's what Empire of Light did. Is it has a lot going for it. It just ends up disappointing because it's not quite what it could have been. But this one also gave me that nostalgic factor of working in a movie theater and actually coming really close to making me feel like I was working in a movie theater. Man, if they had just had like a couple of extra like shift change people, like you know, people who rotate into jobs, you know, oh, it's so and so's day off, so I'm here, you know, like I'd have been like, oh my god, this is it, this is what it was like. I totally feel every moment of this, you know, this from the sweeping of the popcorn, cleaning up the theaters at the end of the night, making sure that you know nobody fell asleep. It's so bad when you have to wake up the person who fell asleep and it's the end of the night. Oh, you don't want to go up there because you're like, if he's dead, I swear to God, if he's dead. So you kind of find yourself like shouting at him. You're like, hey, wake up. We're closed. I'm just hoping that the dude will wake up. But yeah, that happens. So I think Sam Mendes truly did understand what it was like to work in a movie theater. And maybe where he worked, they only had one staff and everybody showed up. And they never needed a shift like somebody to swap in at any moment. So who knows? But anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Again, this is on HBO Max, so you don't have to, pay an exorbitant amount to watch this. And it's under 2 hours, so thank God, because it already runs long. Oh my God, if this film was longer than 2 hours, grade would not have been that high. I can't even imagine like another 30 minutes on this film. I know like Oscar movies love to be long. Jesus. This film already needs about 15 minutes cut from it, but just for pacing purposes. So I'm glad that Sam Mendes didn't push it over 2 hours like a lot of his other films are. So please subscribe so I can continue to talk to you about films with audio description. I have a website, MacTheMovieGuy.com. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at MacTheMovieGuy. You can go to the audio description project, adp.azb.org. It'll let you know what has audio description and where you can watch it. And you can go to the adna.org. That's the adna.org. It'll let you know who is working on the narration for your favorite films and television series. Anyway, that's it for me today. It's my review, Empire of Light. And I will review something else for you guys and see you on the other side.